Before the rivalry, before the sharp words and public feuds, there was a complicated connection between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain. Both came from broken homes and troubled childhoods, their early lives marked by emotional pain and instability. That shared background gave each a kind of raw vulnerability that seeped into their music and shaped their identities. It's easy to forget just how similar their struggles were, despite the later tension that would drive a wedge between them. Axl Rose, the volatile frontman of Guns N' Roses, wasn't just some flashy rock star. Beneath the snarling exterior was someone deeply affected by abandonment and hardship. Kurt Cobain, the quiet but intense leader of Nirvana, channeled his own demons into lyrics that struck a chord with a generation feeling just as lost and disillusioned. Both were voices for the broken and misunderstood, but their ways of expressing it couldn't have been more different. In the early days of Nirvana's rise, Axl openly admired Kurt's songwriting and the raw emotion he brought to the scene. There was a sense of respect there, two artists recognizing kindred spirits in one another. Axl even praised Nirvana publicly, recognizing the power of their music and the impact it was having on youth culture. It wasn't just about competition. There was something almost unspoken, a mutual understanding of pain and the desire to express it. But admiration didn't last. As Nirvana's grunge movement exploded and Guns N' Roses represented the hard rock establishment, the music worlds they inhabited began to clash. Axl was rooted in the excess and rebellion of the late 80s, while Kurt and Nirvana symbolized a new, stripped-down authenticity. The cultural gap grew, and with it, the seeds of tension. Kurt's disdain for Guns N' Roses soon became apparent. He saw them as sellouts, embodying everything he wanted to rebel against. For Kurt, Guns N' Roses were the corporate rock antithesis of the raw, honest music he stood for. The relationship soured from respect to resentment, leaving fans caught in the middle of a growing feud. Despite that, Axl tried to bridge the divide. He invited Nirvana to tour with Guns N' Roses more than once, hoping to find common ground on the road. But Kurt declined, unwilling to share the stage with what he saw as the enemy. This refusal marked a clear ideological break. A refusal not just a collaboration, but what Guns N' Roses represented. That drift was more than just professional. It was personal. As their careers skyrocketed in opposite directions, their views on music, fame, and authenticity clashed like thunder. The early connection that once hinted at a bond between two tortured artists began to unravel, replaced by public jabs and personal bitterness. Still, beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of respect that never fully disappeared. Both knew the pain of being misunderstood and the crushing weight of fame. But as they moved further apart, the friendship they might have had became a distant memory, a reminder of what could have been if life and music hadn't pushed them apart. And what happened next would only deepen the divide, turning respect into raw conflict. What started as quiet admiration quickly morphed into something far more volatile. Kurt Cobain didn't hold back when it came to Guns N' Roses, and especially Axl Rose. To Kurt, they weren't just another band. They represented everything he despised about the music industry. The raw respect faded fast, replaced by sharp, public criticism that cut deeper than fans could see. Kurt's image was built on authenticity and rebellion. Nirvana's grunge sound was an antidote to the glam and excess of the late 80s rock scene. Guns N' Roses, by contrast, seemed to Kurt like a corporate machine fueled by spectacle, excess, and commercialism. They were the big bad wolves of rock, perfectly packaged but lacking soul. His disdain wasn't subtle. In interviews, he openly called out Guns N' Roses as sellouts, accusing them of betraying the spirit of rock and roll. To Kurt, their success wasn't earned through genuine artistry, but through marketing and image. This wasn't just about music style. It was an ideological divide. Kurt rejected what he saw as the hollow excess and ego of Axl Rose. The conflict became personal when Kurt began to associate Guns N' Roses with the very establishment he wanted to challenge. His words weren't just criticisms of a band, but a direct attack on Axl's identity and the world he represented. For Axl, those public digs were hard to swallow. Known for his fiery temper, Axl didn't keep his feelings hidden. Behind the scenes, he took Kurt's insults personally. The respect he once held was overshadowed by frustration and a growing bitterness. Kurt's refusal to join Guns N' Roses on tour didn't help, only deepening the divide. For Axl, it felt like a rejection, not only a collaboration, but of everything he stood for. Yet, Axl's perspective was more complicated than just rivalry. While he bristled at the attacks, there was also a part of him that understood Kurt's resistance. Both were artists wrestling with pain, fame, and identity, even if their responses differed. Axl's attempts to reach out to Kurt through tour invitations were his way of extending a hand, even as Kurt turned away. This period saw a public war of words that captivated fans. It wasn't just two bands, it was two worlds colliding. The media played it up, turning the tension into headlines, fueling rumors and speculation. Fans picked sides, amplifying the feud into something larger than life. But behind the chaos was a deeper tragedy. Two troubled artists struggling with their own demons while clashing over their visions of music and authenticity. Kurt's sharp words echoed his own battles with fame and identity, while Axl's fiery responses reflected his fight to protect his legacy. The bitterness simmered but hadn't yet exploded. What came next at the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards would turn tensions into outright conflict and forever change how the world saw these two icons. And that wasn't the whole story. Amid the brewing tension between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain, something unexpected was happening behind the scenes. Despite Kurt's public disdain and harsh words, Axl was still reaching out, again and again, offering opportunities to bridge the gap. It wasn't just a peace offering. It was a chance to stand side by side, to tour together, and maybe find common ground beyond the headlines. But Kurt's answer was a firm, unyielding no. The invitations started early. Guns N' Roses were massive in the late 80s and early 90s, selling out stadiums and dominating rock charts. Nirvana, meanwhile, was the face of the new grunge movement, capturing a different audience but gaining explosive popularity. Seeing the potential for a powerful joint tour, Axl extended several offers to Kurt and Nirvana to join Guns N' Roses on the road. For Axl, this wasn't just a business move. It was a genuine attempt to unite two musical forces and maybe ease a rivalry that had begun to spiral out of control. He admired Kurt's songwriting and the raw energy Nirvana brought. He believed that touring together could create something unique, a bridge between the old guard and the new wave of rock. But Kurt wasn't interested. More than that, he actively refused the invitations. To him, Guns N' Roses represented everything wrong with the music industry, a symbol of excess, commercialization, and ego that clashed with Nirvana's stripped-down, raw approach. Joining forces with Axl and his band felt like betraying everything he believed in. It was the opposite of what he wanted to stand for. This refusal wasn't just a professional decision. It was ideological. Kurt saw Guns N' Roses as the enemy, embodying a world he wanted no part of. The idea of sharing a stage with Axl Rose was, in Kurt's eyes, selling out his principles. That hardened stance only widened the gulf between the two. The contrast was stark. Axl, despite the insults and public jabs, was trying to reach out and find connection. Kurt, however, was resolute in his rejection, unwilling to compromise on what he saw as authenticity. This clash wasn't just about music. It was a battle over identity and integrity in an industry known for both. Axl's repeated invites and Kurt's steadfast refusal deepened the divide, turning their relationship into a symbol of rock's evolving tensions. Fans watched closely, sensing that something bigger was unfolding, a battle not only between two stars, but between two eras, two philosophies. While Axl's effort showed a surprising vulnerability beneath his tough exterior, Kurt's refusal revealed the depth of his convictions and the sharp lines he drew around his art. Neither seemed willing or able to cross those lines. But this standoff wasn't just about who would tour with whom. It was a sign of growing personal animosity, an ideological clash that was about to explode in public, and with consequences neither could have foreseen. And what happened next would shock everyone. The tension between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain wasn't just simmering behind the scenes. It was about to boil over in one of rock's most unforgettable confrontations. The 1992 MTV Video Music Awards became the backdrop for a moment that would leave fans stunned and the media buzzing for years to come. At the heart of this chaos was more than just music rivalry. It was a clash of personalities and egos at their rawest. The VMA stage was supposed to be a celebration of the era's biggest artists, but for Axl, Kurt, and Courtney Love, it turned into a powder keg ready to explode. The story goes that during the event, Axl confronted Kurt and Courtney with intense hostility. According to multiple accounts, Axl threatened Courtney Love with words that shocked even those nearby. "You shut your bum up or I'll take you down to the pavement." The threat wasn't idle. It reflected the pent-up frustration and anger boiling under the surface for years. Courtney, never one to back down, fired back with venom. She accused Axl of being a corporate creation, stripped of any real soul or heart. The verbal sparring was raw, personal, and unfiltered, far beyond the usual celebrity drama. It was a public explosion of all the buried tension between them. This confrontation wasn't just about words. It was symbolic. It showed the deep divide between two rock worlds. Axl represented the old school, hard rock excess, the grandiose showmanship of the late 80s. Kurt, through Nirvana and Courtney, was the face of the new grunge movement, raw, real, and fiercely anti-establishment. The VMA moment made that divide visible. It was a collision of two very different ways of expressing pain, anger, and frustration. The audience saw the sparks fly, but only those close to the situation understood the depth of the wounds being exposed. Behind the scenes, this public clash marked a turning point. The relationship between Axl and Kurt, once complicated but somewhat respectful, had now become openly hostile. The feud was no longer just media fodder. It was deeply personal. Fans who had once admired both artists were forced to choose sides. The moment fueled rumors and speculation, spreading like wildfire. The media portrayed the incident as the ultimate showdown between grunge and glam, authenticity and excess. But the tension went deeper than music style. It was a battle over identity, artistic integrity, and the toll of fame. Both Axl and Kurt were struggling with their own demons, and the VMA clash was a raw, explosive release of all that pressure. The fallout from that night lingered. It shaped public perception and cast a long shadow over both artists' legacies. What started as admiration, turned to resentment, had now erupted into open hostility, one that neither seemed ready to reconcile. And yet, the story didn't end there. The events that followed would reveal a different side of Axl Rose, a side marked by grief and regret that few expected. When the world learned about Kurt Cobain's death in April 1994, the shockwaves rippled far beyond the music scene. For many, Kurt's passing was a tragic end to a troubled life. But for Axl Rose, it hit on a deeply personal level that few knew about at the time. Beneath the fiery frontman's tough exterior was a man profoundly affected, shaken to his core by the loss of a fellow artist he once admired, even amid their bitter history. Reports from those close to Axl revealed that the news of Kurt's death left him devastated. Rather than responding with the usual bravado or dismissiveness, Axl was quiet, caught in a rare moment of vulnerability. He stayed up until the early hours, talking with friends and wrestling with the reality of losing someone he understood on a level few could. This reaction might seem surprising, given the public feud between the two. But underneath the headlines and harsh words was a complex relationship, a mix of rivalry, respect, and shared pain. Both men were tortured souls grappling with fame, addiction, and inner turmoil. In many ways, Kurt's struggles mirrored Axl's own battles. Axl's manager described him as despondent in the days following Kurt's death. The usually unshakable frontman seemed consumed by grief, recognizing in Kurt a reflection of his own demons. It was a moment that stripped away the bravado and revealed the raw humanity beneath. This hidden grief stayed largely out of the spotlight. Axl didn't make grand public statements or memorials. Instead, he processed the loss privately, haunted by the thought of what might have been if things had gone differently. There was regret, too, a sense that perhaps he could have reached out, helped, or changed the course of events. The tragedy of Kurt's death underscored the fragility behind rock stardom, the price of living life in the spotlight while battling personal demons. For Axl, it was a painful reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. The music world mourned the loss of a generation's voice, but for Axl, it was also the loss of a complicated connection. Someone who, despite everything, shared the weight of fame and pain in a way few others could understand. And yet, even in grief, the story wasn't over. Axl's reflections years later will reveal an honesty and remorse that surprised many, shining a new light on their tangled history. For years, Axl Rose stayed mostly quiet about Kurt Cobain. The feud, the public clashes, the bitter words, those moments defined their relationship in the eyes of fans and the media. But recently, Axl broke his silence, revealing a side of the story few expected. What he said about Kurt wasn't just anger or resentment. It was complicated, raw, and surprisingly honest. In a rare interview, Axl admitted that his feelings toward Kurt were never black and white. He acknowledged the pain, the rivalry, but also the respect he held beneath it all. Kurt was a troubled guy. Axl said, "We both came from broken places, and maybe that's why we connected and why things got so messy." Axl revealed he'd struggle with conflicting emotions, admiration mixed with frustration. He didn't shy away from the harsh truths. Kurt's battles with addiction, the self-destructive tendencies, and the darkness that eventually overwhelmed him. But rather than condemn, Axl sounded reflective, almost empathetic. What surprised many was how Axl described Kurt's impact on music and culture. "He changed everything," Axl admitted. Kurt wasn't just a musician. He was a voice for a generation lost in confusion and pain. I respected that. This new perspective wasn't an attempt to rewrite history, but to bring nuance to a story often reduced to headlines and sound bites. Axl spoke about the pressures both faced, the loneliness behind the fame, and how those struggles sometimes push them apart instead of bringing them closer. He also addressed the infamous VMA incident, not with excuses, but with acknowledgement of the tension and mistakes made. "We were both on edge, caught in the chaos of everything happening around us. It wasn't pretty, but it was real." This candidness marked a shift from the fiery, defensive Axl fans once knew. It showed growth, a willingness to look back honestly, and maybe a bit of regret for how things played out. Most importantly, Axl's words reminded everyone that behind the rock star personas were flawed, vulnerable people. People trying to navigate pain, fame, and their own demons. It wasn't a simple story of rivalry or hatred, but a complicated, human tale of connection, conflict, and loss. As fans digest Axl's revelations, it's clear that the relationship between these two icons is far from over. Even decades later, the echoes of their story continue to resonate. And while the past can't be changed, understanding it better might finally bring some peace to a story that has haunted rock history for years. The tangled history between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain isn't just a tale of rivalry. It's a window into the harsh realities of fame, pain, and the human cost behind the rock star image. Their story reveals how two iconic figures, both shaped by personal struggles and the brutal pressures of the music industry, collided in ways that were as tragic as they were fascinating. From shared beginnings marked by broken homes and emotional scars, to a complex mix of respect and resentment, Axl and Kurt embodied different sides of the same coin. Their contrasting styles, Axl's bombastic hard rock and Kurt's raw grunge honesty, were more than musical differences. They represented clashing philosophies about what it meant to be authentic in a world that often demands you wear a mask. Their public feud, fueled by harsh words and unforgettable moments like the 1992 MTV VMAs showdown, captured the imagination of fans and the media alike. But behind the headlines lay deeper struggles, loneliness, addiction, and the crushing weight of expectations. Both men fought battles few saw, and their conflict was as much internal as it was external. Kurt's untimely death exposed the fragility beneath the fame, leaving a mark on Axl that surprised many. His private grief and later reflections revealed a side of their story that went beyond rivalry, a story of shared pain, missed chances, and complicated humanity. Axl's recent candid words about Kurt add new layers to this narrative. They show that beneath the public feud was a complicated relationship filled with both admiration and frustration, a reminder that even the biggest conflicts often come from places of vulnerability and connection. Ultimately, their story teaches us about the double-edged sword of fame, the way it can elevate and destroy, bind and divide. It challenges us to see beyond the headlines and remember the people behind personas, struggling to make sense of their own lives amid chaos and spotlight. For fans, this means reconsidering the narrative of rivalry and recognizing the human stories that define these legends. It's a reminder that even the most intense conflicts can have roots in shared experience and pain. And as the years pass, the legacy of Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain remains a powerful testament to the complexities of fame, the cost of authenticity, and the enduring impact of music that speaks to the heart of a generation.